In this lesson, we'll discuss operation of the F-15C's APG-63V1 radar. This is a look-down, shoot-down radar, meaning, unlike older radars, it can detect and fire at targets below your altitude. Also, it's capable of simultaneously detecting, tracking, and engaging dozens of targets. We'll first discuss the modes useful for beyond visual range, or BVR, target engagements. The mission is currently paused. Enable Beyond Visual Range Master Mode by pressing 2. You can tell you're no longer in navigation mode because the ADI button on the instrument panel is no longer lit, and some of the navigation information is no longer displayed on the HUD. In the bottom left of your HUD, just above the G-loading readout, is your current Mach number, your speed relative to the speed of sound. Next, turn on your radar by pressing I. Your VST has now come alive, displaying data from your radar. The VST shows the radar picture as a view from above your aircraft. The number in the top right is the current range setting of the display in nautical miles. The grid lines are range and azimuth references. The area shown in the VST represents a pie slice of space in front of the aircraft, but displayed stretched out to a square. The bottom line represents your position. This is illustrated in the first image of your mission briefing. Press left Alt-B to bring it up. The spacing between each horizontal grid line represents 1/4 of the selected range, and the spacing between each vertical line represents 30 degrees in azimuth. That means that from left to right, the 5 vertical lines correspond to your 10, 11, 12, 1, and 2 o'clock. Press the spacebar to continue. The default radar mode in navigation or BVR mode is long-range search or LRS. In this mode, the radar antenna repeats left-to-right scans at different elevation angles to scan the space in front of the aircraft. The carets on the bottom and left edges of the VST show the current angle of the antenna as it progresses through the scan pattern. The default azimuth scan zone width is 120 degrees, but you can switch to half this width. This will give faster updates at the expense of a smaller scan zone. To switch to the narrower scan zone, press right Ctrl-. Do this now. A pair of small vertical lines in the middle of the VST is the acquisition symbol. This is a cursor that you can move around to select targets. Try moving the cursor around by pressing the comma, period, slash, and semicolon keys. Notice that the scan zone moves with the acquisition symbol. The 2 circles on the bottom of the VST indicate the edges of the scan zone. Next, return to the wide scan zone setting by pressing right Ctrl=. You can increase and decrease the display range setting by pressing minus and equals respectively. Change your range to 80 miles, then press the spacebar to continue. I've added 2 aircraft flying ahead of you. You should see them as a rectangle and a circle on your VST. Circles indicate friendly contacts, and other contacts will be displayed as rectangles. Press the spacebar to continue. In the bottom left of the VSD, you will see the words high or med. This is the pulse repetition frequency, or PRF, of the radar at the moment. Different PRFs have better detection ranges in different situations. High PRF is better for high closure rate targets, such as when you and your target are flying towards each other, while medium PRF has less range but can better detect medium to low closure targets. The default PRF setting of LRS mode is interleaved, where the radar cycles between high and medium PRFs as it scans. This is handy when you do not know the closure rate of the target already. You can manually cycle between the interleaved high and medium settings by pressing right Shift I. I've added 2 aircraft, one flying towards you, high closure, and one flying away, low closure. Practice adjusting your PRF and notice how different PRF settings will detect different targets. When you lose detection of a target, it will take a few seconds to fade from your radar screen. After you've done this, select high PRF and press the spacebar to continue. Just as the radar has a set range of angles it scans in azimuth, it also has a set range it scans in elevation. The altitude range your radar is sweeping at the distance of the acquisition symbol is shown in thousands of feet by the 2 numbers on the left edge of the VSD. The farther out the acquisition symbol is, the greater range of altitude your radar will cover. There's a notional illustration of this in picture 2 in your briefing. The gray aircraft are out of view of your radar. You can tilt the radar antenna up and down to change its elevation coverage by pressing right Shift semicolon and right Shift period respectively. I've had 2 aircraft flying towards you about 20 miles away, one below you and one above you. Adjust the antenna elevation up and down until you've detected both aircraft. Then press the spacebar to continue. That covers LRS mode. The next mode we'll talk about is single target track, or STT. This is the mode where you've locked a single target. To enter this mode, we'll first have to select a target and lock it. I've added an aircraft flying towards you at 20,000 feet altitude from about 25 miles away. Located on your VSD, move the acquisition symbol over it with the comma, period, slash, and semicolon keys, and then press enter to lock the target and enter STT mode. Press the spacebar once you've done this. In single target track mode, the radar is no longer scanning around but is fixed on the target. This means you will no longer see other contacts on your VSD. Also, because your radar beam is fixed on your target, their RWR will know that you are locked on them. In SGT mode, you're able to determine much more information about your target. To start with, the icon for the contact now indicates its heading. At the top left of the VSD, you are now presented with, first, the target's true airspeed, second, target aspect angle, what side of the target is facing you, H means head, L is left, R is right, and T is tail, and third, the target's heading in degrees. The number on the left side of the VSD is the target's elevation. For example, 19-9 means 19,900 feet. The two numbers on the bottom right of the VSD are the bearing of the target in tens of degrees and the range to the target in nautical miles. The text on the bottom to the right of your ground speed is the type of aircraft you're targeting, in this case a C-130. If the target is too far away to tell, this will read UKN for unknown. The number on the right side of the VSD is the closure rate of your target in knots. Press the spacebar to continue. In SGT, your HUD will also provide information about the locked target. The box that appears is referred to as the target designation box, and it graphically illustrates the location of your target. This box will have an X inside it, as it does now when the locked target is friendly, to remind you not to shoot them. In the bottom right of the HUD, the number after R is the range to the target in miles, and the single letter on the bottom row is the target aspect, currently H for head. Next, unlock the target and return to LRS mode by pressing Enter again. You're now detecting an aircraft that is using its ECM by detecting its jammer signals. This is shown in your VSD as a column of hollow rectangles. When an aircraft is using its ECM, you will be able to determine its azimuth but not its distance or any other information until you're close enough that your radar can overpower the ECM, around 15 to 23 miles. You can still lock onto a jamming aircraft though. This is called Home on Jam or Hlj Mode. Move the acquisition symbol over one of the hollow rectangles and enter Hlj Mode by pressing Enter to lock. You are now in Hlj Mode as indicated in the HUD. In the VSD, a vertical line through the column of rectangles indicates you're locked onto the jammer source. Because you're passively locking onto the jamming signals from the target, your target will get no lock notification from their RWR. In Hlj mode, you can still launch missiles at your locked target, but the missiles will be less effective since they will have less information to make their targeting calculations. Once you get close enough that you can achieve a normal radar lock, you will automatically transition from Hlj to SGT mode. Unlock the target and return to LRS mode by pressing Enter. If it isn't already, set your radar display range to 40 miles, minus and equals to adjust range, and switch to the inner-leaf PRS, right shift I to cycle PRF. Next, we'll talk about track while scan or TWS mode. You can switch between LRS and TWS by pressing right Alt I. Do this now. In TWS mode, the radar will provide detailed target data on a contact while still being able to scan for other contacts. Each radar contact will indicate its azimuth as well as its altitude by the numbers shown above its icon in thousands of feet. The downside of TWS is that the radar can lose track of targets more easily than an LRS, particularly if the targets make evasive high-G maneuvers that quickly change their direction and speed. Also, the wider 120-degree azimuth range setting isn't available in TWS. In TWS, you won't have an indication of the current PRS setting, so you'll have to remember what it is or switch back to LRS to check. I've added 3 aircraft ahead of you around 15,000 feet altitude. Move the acquisition symbol over one of the contacts and press Enter once to select it. Press the spacebar once you've done so. You have now designated a target as the primary designated target, or PDT. The VSD and HUD displays are similar to SGT, except you will continue to track the other contacts. The PDT is represented in the VSD by a roughly star-shaped symbol. Note that the target aspect indications H, L, T, or R in the VSD and in the HUD are now prefixed by a number. This is the target aspect angle in tens of degrees. Another perk of TWS is that when you lock a target, the target will get no lock warning from their RWR. Next, move the acquisition symbol over an unselected target and press Enter once. Press the spacebar once you've done this. The symbol for the newly designated target has changed to a hollow rectangle. This is referred to as a secondary designated target, or SGT. You can select multiple SGTs. The number 1 to the right of the SGT icon indicates that this is the first SGT. All of the target data, bearing, range, altitude, etc., displayed in the VSD pertains to the PDT. If you fire multiple missiles, they will launch at the PDT, first SGT, second SGT, etc. in order. This will allow you to target multiple aircraft in advance, and once you're within missile range, fire missiles at all of them at once without having to stop and select the next target in between. You can deselect targets in TWS by pressing backspace. You can switch to SGT by placing the acquisition symbol over a PDT or SGT and pressing Enter again. Do this now, and then press the spacebar to continue. Return to navigation mode now by pressing 1. This completes the lesson on LRS, SGT, Hlj, and TWS radar modes. Press Escape to end the lesson now.